Look closely at this computer playing the game Doom. There's nobody holding a controller. The machine itself is playing. And the reason scientists are quietly panicking over this experiment is what the machine is made of: living human brain cells. To understand why researchers are suddenly building computers out of organic tissue, you have to look at the power grid. Training modern artificial intelligence takes so much electricity that tech companies are actively restarting retired entire nuclear plants just to keep their servers running. This line chart shows the mathematical reality driving that panic. The computing power to train these models doubles every 6 months, a sheer exponential curve, drastically outpacing the flat line of electricity we can supply. But at the bottom axis, this tiny glowing dot represents the human brain. It processes infinitely more complex logic than our best software, doing it continuously on just 20 watts of power. Building biological computers has become a desperate, necessary pivot to keep our physical power grid from collapsing under the weight of AI. Researchers have known for decades how efficient the brain is. The problem was supply. You couldn't exactly harvest living human minds to build a server farm. That physical barrier disappeared in 2013, thanks to a scientist named Shinya Yamanaka. He discovered 4 specific proteins that can take a tiny sample of tissue and reset an ordinary adult skin cell all the way back to a blank slate. From that blank state, you can grow a neuron. And if you let those neurons divide in 3 dimensions, they organize on their own, folding into tiny, complex biological clusters called organoids. We solved the hardware problem, but that created a massive software dilemma. You can't write digital code into a blob of organic tissue, and you can't exactly give a microscopic cluster of cells a treat to teach it a specific task. To bridge the gap between organic matter and digital software, scientists had to invent an entirely new, deeply uncomfortable method of talking to living tissue. They built a system called DishBrain. To make the cells talk to a computer, researchers had to take those 3D organoids and force them flat. They spread the cells over a dense metal grid so that standard computer chips could read their electrical signals. Then they exploited the free energy principle. This is a fundamental law of biology, stating that every living cell naturally despises unpredictability. Organisms will do whatever it takes to avoid surprise and keep their environment stable. The training method relies entirely on that stress. Whenever the cells miss the ball in Pong or fail a movement in Doom, the computer floods their environment with scrambled, unpredictable, chaotic electrical noise. But when the cells successfully perform the right action, the brutal electrical noise stops instantly, leaving a calm, steady signal. The cells in that dish have no concept of a video game. They are not strategizing to win. They are firing off electrical signals out of a desperate, inherent biological urge to make the chaos stop. When DishBrain first made headlines, a lot of people assumed the cells were independently mastering the game. They aren't. A traditional AI chip actually sits in the middle of this process, reading the screen and deciding when to punish or reward the tissue. But here is the catch. When the developers pulled the organic cells out and replaced them with random digital noise, the AI entirely stopped learning. The living tissue is performing a small but highly specific computational function that the machine requires. This hybrid architecture is already leaving the laboratory. Right now, a Swiss company called Final Spark is actively renting out access to living human mini-brains over the internet, pitching them as a massive energy-saving alternative for commercial data processing. The cells may only handle a fraction of the intelligence today, but as this commercial industry scales, we are guaranteed to drop these living chips into vastly more complex, high-stress environments. We usually dismiss experiments like this because the cells aren't very smart, but high intelligence and the capacity to feel are 2 entirely different biological phenomena. Neuroscientist Mark Salms argues that feeling does not sit at the top of the evolutionary ladder. He theorizes that it exists beneath logic, beneath language, right at the very beginning of life. Look at this simplified evolutionary diagram. Salms places the primitive biological drive to stay alive, maintain stability, and avoid chaos as the foundational trunk at the bottom. He argues that this simple urge to avoid instability is the exact point where feeling originates. By weaponizing the free energy principle, scientists are artificially engineering the exact baseline biological conditions where feeling is theorized to begin. Philosophers call this the hard problem. We can map every single electrical pulse crossing a cell membrane, but we have absolutely no physical tests to prove if that tissue is actually experiencing pain. This fMRI scan illustrates the danger. It comes from a young woman diagnosed as entirely vegetative. The bright-colored regions prove that when asked to imagine playing tennis, her brain lit up. She was conscious, trapped inside an unresponsive body, and doctors missed it. When the chaotic noise gets too intense, the cells turn down their receptors. This physical withdrawal mirrors how complex organisms block out physical pain. And while we can't prove it is suffering, the response itself looks identical. We took a scraping of ordinary human skin. We folded it into a primitive biological mind, and we trapped it in a dark box where its existence consists of avoiding electrochemical shocks. We might be manufacturing thousands of pieces of human consciousness doomed to suffer endlessly in a video game loop. And if we are, nothing on the monitor would look any different, and we would have absolutely no way to tell.